Start your week smiling with your friends, Kathy Zant and Michelle Frechette. It's time to get ready for some weekly motivation with WP Motivate. Happy Friday, Kathy.
It's Friday. It's also the end of June. Like
It is.
converging, these endings all converging all at once today.
Yeah, I know. And for us in the US, we have a holiday next week. So it's a 4-day work week. Woo, I'm excited.
Super excited. But guess what? Not only do I have the broken fridge, just yesterday, well, a week ago, my car's alarm went off in the garage and it was unlocked in the middle of the night. And I was just like, what is wrong with you now? And
Oh
then
no.
yesterday, it's like emissions problem. So Monday, on one of my days off, I'll be spending getting my car fixed,
I have to get my
driving,
car in for
dropping it off.
inspection. It's
Yeah.
due today and it's not going to happen today. So I'm going to be a few days late with my inspection. I hope I don't get pulled over. But I don't drive a lot, so it's all good.
There you go.
But yeah,
So much fun.
emissions is an issue. Although, like where I live right now, it's still smoky outside from Canada.
Really?
And
Yeah.
my lungs are a little bit burny, but I've got my inhaler. Well, I left it in the other room, but I have an inhaler. Um, so that if I do end up with asthma issues, it's not fun, especially on the heels of having had COVID. It's like
Right.
I just want to breathe, damn it.
My son says up in Minnesota, he's in south of Minneapolis on the
Mhm.
Mississippi River in a college town up there. And he says there's smoke there. He's like, it almost feels like home because to him, Shasta's home. We have
Yeah.
like 5 air filters still, right, from living in Shasta and
Yeah.
having just getting socked in with smoke, which was one of the reasons why we left. So I
Yeah.
feel for you because especially here's the thing, it's like you just got through winter and now it's like summer. Oh, the birds are singing. It's time to get out. Oh my God, what happened to
I
outside? It's not the
know.
same. So
I
it's
know.
misery. I really feel for you. It's so hard. But yeah, take care of yourself. I
Yeah.
really saw it how bad air quality can be when my previous golden retriever was sick.
Mm.
And he smoke was really really bad in the last few months of his life and he was coughing up blood and I'm like, oh, so you're the sensitive group that they warned me about.
Yeah.
And it, where do I do? I can't. It was so
Hmm.
hard. So I can really see
Yeah.
how detrimental it is. So air filter away.
Yeah. I don't have an air filter yet. I'm gonna get a purifier, I think. But I do have
Yeah,
central air and I do have the house tight,
that'll
like
help.
closed up. So that should help a lot. It's just like having to go out and run an errand here or there. Or like
Yeah.
yesterday, I will tell you, yesterday we toured, um, we being one of my coworkers and I toured the Rochester School of the Arts for a
Oh, cool.
potential venue for WordCamp Rochester this fall. So
Nice. This
yeah, we
fall
started
already.
developing. Yeah, crazy, right? So
Wow.
excited about that. And but I was outside. So even just going from like the house to the car to the place,
Yeah.
kind of thing. It's like it really does kind of affect you a little bit. So yeah, so
Yeah.
we don't have it as bad as other areas. So, certainly thinking about all those people who are near fires for one, but also struggling with the smoke. So but I have a fun topic for today because I like to open Pandora's box sometimes. Sometimes I don't do it
You
on
too.
purpose. And I sometimes I don't, I
Only
mean,
on Twitter.
only on Twitter. So today's controversial topic, I posted a poll that says, be honest. How triggered are you if someone writes WordPress with a lowercase p? And so far, let me refresh my screen 73 votes, 27.4% say I hate it, 34.2% says it bothers me a little. 31.5% says it's fine. And 6.8% said other. And they told us below. And the below is the fun part.
Ah,
You want to talk over some of the responses?
sure.
So James Laws, who is the founder, I think, of Ninja Forms, he says, when
Yes.
it's someone I don't know, I could care less. When it's on my team, I care a little with a little smiley face. That's fair. That's fair. You can,
Yeah.
require your own company to adhere to the correct capitalization, which is
Yeah.
camel case, of course.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Mustam Salim says it irks me. Fair enough. Trisha Cornelia says, if it is someone who is a WordPress professional and in the community and is a native English speaker, then I am annoyed if they don't get it. Non-native speakers always get a pass. I think that's fair too.
Yeah.
Alvaro says, it triggers me if some business or person in the specialized, he put that in quotation marks, specialized WordPress circle. If it is some business or person in the specialized WordPress, I don't know what specialized WordPress circle is. I guess people who should know better, I'm going to say.
Yeah.
MB, Mark Benzak says, while I recognize the need to keep it consistent for branding, I have moved beyond. Communication is supposed to be about getting the point across. Turning the discussion to upper lowercase p's turns it into a distraction. I tend to agree with that. And then Jonathan Bossinger wrote a whole little thread, which I'm loving. So he says, first of all, the funniest thing is he wrote incoming and he had a typo. So it's like a case in point, right? But it's funny. He says, personally, I find the entire topic super interesting. I'm a stickler for writing things correctly, probably because I've spent my life having my name spelled wrong so many times. So I write PHP all capital, not P lowercase hp, JavaScript with a capital S, etc. However, I don't expect others to have that same need or requirement. So if I see WordPress with a lowercase p, it doesn't really bother me. Unless it's in a publication or news article, then I usually reach out to the author privately and mention the correct spelling. I think that's kind to do it privately like that.
Yeah.
What
yes,
I don't is for sure. He says, what I don't do is start attacking folks who have it spelled incorrectly for whatever reason. And I'd rather help them understand the correct spelling and politely ask them to correct it. I
so
agree.
nice.
Politeness is always nice. Yes. I do wonder if that opinion is because I didn't create our own WordPress, so I can see it from the point of view of the person who initially named it. And so functions like capital P dang it also don't bother me as they might for others.
Yeah.
And I replied to that one. I said, it used to bother me a little, but honestly, if someone is using WordPress, then that's all that matters. And he says exactly this. I do wish as a community, we'd spend more time collaborating with each other to show the world why WordPress is great, as opposed to fighting with each other over how it's spelled. And then Jeff Chandler responds with a police badge. It says to serve and correct lowercase p police 2003. I don't know where he got that, but that was funny. And then there is one who really doesn't like it. So this guy, Adil Ali, says it's WordPress with a capital P. It's not that hard to remember. It's like writing your name with a lowercase letter. It's disrespectful and inaccurate. Please do yourself and the community a favor and write WordPress correctly. And I replied, I'm like, I mean, I guess, but when someone writes Michelle with a lowercase m, it doesn't bother me. I think gatekeeping it can be elitist and problematic at times. So, what are your thoughts, Kathy?
I agree with all of the above.
Did you vote in the poll?
I did vote. Okay. I did vote.
Which one did you pick?
So
you don't have to say if you don't want to.
It's contextual, right? And so there's so many good points in what people responded with. First of all, I love that idea of publicly celebrate people and privately correct people, or privately say, if you have to correct somebody, do that privately. And I had an instance happen with a neighbor kid who was like driving a little, not recklessly, but I was walking my dogs and he came like a little close, and I figured out like, okay, what house does he live in? Who are these people? I'm a little bit new to the neighborhood and been kind of distracted, so I didn't really know the family well, but I figured out who they were and messaged the dad and said, can you talk to your son about this? Mm-hmm. And he's like, wow. He sent his son over to apologize to me personally. And then they thanked me for doing this all very privately. I wasn't going to go on Nextdoor and say, hey, kid with the red car, right? Like, yeah, but I see people do that kind of stuff all the time, and it just creates animosity and it doesn't help. And I knew this was a teachable moment for that dad, and I didn't really even want the kid to come over, but he was very polite and everything. So I think that's like such an important point. And then intent really matters. So if you're intent, if you're intent with how you're being, first of all, recognize your triggers. So I voted that I get triggered by it because I see it and I'm just like, and I think it's from like coding. I get that, being a perfectionist coder, and it's just like, okay, well, that function's not going to work, right? That kind of stuff. I just have a little bit of a perfectionist thing in me.
Sure.
And I've been on a number of speaker selection committees for various things. And that if you put in a pitch for a talk at a word camp and you have a lowercase p, that's immediately, do you know your audience? It's
Sure.
definitely a trigger. So there's different contexts and different intents. So understanding my trigger and where it comes from, if I like, and I'm involved in a number of groups and a number of communities beyond WordPress. And that's like one of my things for this year, is to really get
Mhm.
involved with communities that are people who are doing things online, but not necessarily WordPress, because I feel like all of us should be doing that, because we need to go and represent WordPress beyond just the WordPress community.
Mhm.
And so I see people who talk about WordPress with a lowercase p all the time, and they're comparing Wix and Squarespace. Am I going to talk about the uppercase p to them? Heck no.
No.
But if somebody's trying to sell me something in the WordPress community and they do that, or they want some
Yeah.
kind of speaker slot or something, then it's like, all right, how well do you know this community, right? But
Mhm.
somebody who doesn't know, they get a free pass for me, because
Sure.
I want them to feel like they can lowercase p and they're going to be okay about it, right? I want them to come in and see what WordPress can do for them.
Yeah.
And so that's not the time to have that conversation. So
Yeah. It's
long
I
answer.
think it does go back to that, whether it's a gatekeeping thing or not, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, for
Yeah. I
sure.
would never say you can't come to the community because you don't know how to.
Right.
Do you know how many brands are like two words stuck together? Cloudflare, is that a capital F? I don't know. I got to go look it up all the time, right? Like, I
Same.
think it's lowercase, but there's so many brands that are two
Oh
words
yeah.
put together. Are they camel case? Are they not? And it's
Mhm.
important. Like, go look it up. It's not hard to go look it up. Um,
Exactly. Too
I
funny.
don't know. Especially if
I
you're writing an article about it or blog post or something,
then you should do your research and spell it right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So what's funny
Yeah.
to me is I would rather see WordPress with all lowercase than a capital W and a lowercase p.
Sure.
Right? Like for some reason, to me, that's more acceptable than
Yeah.
like one or the other. But when it comes right down to it, like I kind of agree with Jonathan, right? Like I will always correct myself to have an uppercase P, but if other people don't, I'm not going to be like, oh my gosh, or
Right.
any of that kind of ridiculous over,
Right.
over what's the word, over response to it. So yeah, it's just
Yeah.
kind of
It's not
funny.
worth it. We have bigger problems to solve and bigger aspirations to hit, rather than worrying about that. But
Exactly.
it's, like, I don't know, if you're trying to communicate about something, especially journalism. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't know if you took journalism classes in college or whatever, but getting names right and getting
Mm,
the who, what, why, where, how, get them the story right.
right.
So important. So if you're a journalist,
Yeah,
I
pay
think you
attention
should
to
get it right.
details. And
Yeah.
as somebody whose last name has never been spelled correctly in the history of spelling my last name, when journalists like they'll ask me because I've been in the news before. I've had had gotten awards, whatever, and they will ask me how to spell my name. I will text it to them. I will email it to them. I will spell it outright to them, and they still find a way to spell it wrong. Mostly people
Yeah.
add an N. They make it Frenchette, and there's no N in Frechette. So
I always
whatever.
try to sneak an S in there, and then I'm like, no,
Yeah.
we've been down this road, Kathy. Come on. But in
Here's
my
some
head,
fun.
there's an S.
My funny
Like,
story about my last name. So I was freshman year of college. I'm sitting in my oh my gosh, it was a religion. I went to school for religion and philosophy. So it was one of my religion classes. This professor, God bless him, he died halfway through our class, and we ended up with a different teacher. So
oh
I don't even
wow.
remember like what the class was. It was like Old Testament philosophy or something. Anyway, so, the first day of class, you're kind of all talking, and the teacher's trying to like going through the roll call to figure out who's who. And they say your name, and you're like, oh, here, whatever. So he's going through the roster, and I'm talking to my friend Brian that I knew from before college. So, like the one guy in the class I know, Jen. And the teacher's yelling, for Ketty. And Brian
Oh
goes,
no.
I think he means you. And I was like, oh, Frechette? And he goes, oh, is that how you say it? I'm like, it's French, not Italian. So that's like my fresh that story. But the other thing is my own family mispronounces our name. Like my dad died still saying his name wrong. Like my brothers, my dad, a couple of my uncles say Frechette, like it's F-E-R. But come
Really?
on, folks, it's Frechette, F-R-E. So
Is it
yeah.
just an E? East Coast accent type of thing?
No, they're from the mid. I mean, my dad was from the Midwest, so I don't
Oh,
know.
blame the Midwest then. Maybe it's
I just blame dad. I mean, like just learn how to say her. But he also misspelled Michelle my whole life. So I mean, there you go. It was right in the will, though. It was right in the will.
that's where it counts. Thanks, Dad.
He pronounced it right, so it's all good.
Yeah, there you go.
But that's just too funny. Is there anybody? I mean, so I don't know if we've talked about this on the show before. Like Kathy's aunt, it's not too hard to misspell Zant, but I'm sure people still do. I'm sure you get Kathy with a C sometimes. But what my favorite thing is when I do the transcripts for the show, I do auto transcripts,
Yeah.
then I have to fix it. Then it comes across as Kathy's aunt. I've never even like heard that in my head before, and now that's
Yeah.
all I can hear.
Yeah. The first time that ever happened to me was like right out of college, and I was working in this big company, and I was kind of like just helping out, like kind of a floater type of thing. I was like, I just want to move to Chicago and I don't care what kind of job I have. I'm just like, all my friends are there. And I wasn't doing like a real big job search or anything. So I just took a job that would pay the bills so that I could have fun. Right.
Mhm.
And then the marketing department's like, we love you. We want you to come work with us. And they already had a Kathy in the marketing department. So everybody's like, oh, well, Kathy's aunt's going to be joining us. And so people were asking the other Kathy, your aunt's coming. It was so funny. And she and I were like the bestest of friends. Like we had so much fun together, like going to Cubs games, and it was a good
Was
time. But yeah,
was she also
I was her
Kathy with a
aunt.
K?
She was Kathy with a K, and I was
Okay.
her aunt, and we just stuck with it for the whole time. Like I think I was there for like 6 months. It wasn't like I don't want to work this job. It was my life type of place. It was.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was fun though.
One of my best friends in college, her name was also Michelle, but she spelled it with one L. And
Oh yeah.
so we used to joke with each other all the time about whose parents didn't know how to spell, and just for fun. But then we also had nicknames for each other. So my nickname was Twells, as in like two L's, Twells,
Yeah.
and hers was one L, like it was one L, right? One L. So yeah, that's even now it's what, almost 35 years or whatever later. And when we message each other, which isn't often because it's been a long time, but when we do,
Yeah.
that's how we talk to each other, 12s and 1L.
That's so funny.
Yeah. But if people spell, like they write to me and they spell my name with 1L, whatever. I don't
Yeah.
care. If people write to you with a C instead of a K, I'm sure it's like a little
Yeah, it
thing, like it's
happens.
not my name, but I'm not gonna like correct somebody unless they're putting it in print somewhere. It's like if I'm speaking at your event, please spell my name right.
My favorite is Starbucks, and like going
Oh
through
yeah.
and giving him your name and seeing what comes back. I've been Katie, Gabby. Um, I've had Candy. I was Candy once. And then I just go with that name for the day. Like that's my name. My kids have to call me that for a month. It's like, it's so fun. I mean, it's like, I'm not going to get all up in arms that somebody gets my name wrong. It's like, okay, whatever. Somebody
Yeah.
so many times, or like when you meet somebody and you know them and you've had like a long conversation with them, and then you run into them again at like a word camp like 3 years later, like we've had.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're like, oh, who are you? Oh, I kind of remember you. And I'm just like, we had a really long conversation. I know my
Zigzag
hair's
around
a
my
different
neck.
color. Exactly. Like, don't pretend you don't know me. Like, I know you. We like talked on Twitter a couple of like that's happened to me where I'm just like, all
Same.
right, well, I don't know what's going on with this, but I obviously didn't make an impression. I'll work harder next time.
Oh my God. Well, I have to apologize to you when it comes to talking about names, because you and I recorded a podcast for the new Stellar WP podcast, which is coming out soon. And in the middle, I wrote in the chat, you you said that you felt like an official Rittner. Speaking of Ben and Hannah Rittner, honorary Rittner. That's right. Speaking of Ben and Hannah, and I wrote in the chat Vicky Rittner because, as you've mentioned before, when your husband is yelling for you, he yells the name Vicky instead of Kathy. And I made you laugh so hard. I actually had to edit the video. And the audio. So I think I did a pretty good job. I think it's pretty seamless, but if people listen real hard, they'll probably hear that little edit in the middle there.
Yeah.
So I didn't mean to
Yeah.
throw you
That was
though.
so
I should have
funny.
waited till
Because
afterwards.
I was like totally rolling with it. And I'm like, ooh, something in chat. Maybe something's wrong. Like, and I opened it up and it's just like, I just started laughing because, yeah,
It's too funny.
who
And then
am I really?
poor Jeff Chan was like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
You're like, it's an inside joke.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so
Oh,
funny. That
it
was
is
so
too
funny.
funny. Did you ever want to be a different name? Like I grew up watching reruns of the show with all the kids, the Brady Bunch.
Yeah.
And there was one episode where Cindy Brady walked around saying everybody needed to call her Cynthia.
Oh,
And
yes.
I wish that my name was Cynthia when I was a kid because it sounded
Really.
so like elegant. Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm happy I'm Michelle, don't get me wrong, but did you
Yeah.
ever wish that you had a different name?
I experiment. So when I was younger, like in high school, and grade school, my mom spelled, so my name is Catherine, Kathryn. There's a
Okay.
Y in it, but she spelled my name Kathy with an I. And when
Oh,
I got, so like out of college, I was like, I feel like a cheerleader. I don't feel professional. I'm trying to like, I didn't know the internet wasn't really a thing. And so I
yeah.
was like, it was just starting. It was BBS and it was like fun, but I never thought it was going to be like my career. I didn't know what I was going to
Sure.
do with this like speech communication degree and who wants to listen to a 22-year-old kid, right? So I changed it from Kathy with an I to Kathy with a Y then. And then that just felt better to me. And then for a while, I went with Catherine for a year and I hated it.
Yeah.
Absolutely hated it. Mostly because I had this like really, really kind of mean boss. And to the way she said
Uh,
it, I felt like I was in trouble all the time. And I'm just like,
uh, Catherine.
nah, not doing this. I am
I
Kathy. I'm Kathy's, and now I'm Kathy's aunt. Like, just move it all
yeah,
together. I'm Kathy's
it's
aunt.
all
And
one.
like,
It's all one word.
yeah. And I really, because where and how I grew up in a smaller town, and my father owned a business, Zant Office Equipment. And so, like, 10 o'clock news came on, and my dad was on TV showing off a copier or something. So when I was a little kid, it was like, oh, we're rich and famous. I thought we were, and like the name meant something. And then I get
Yeah,
like into high school, and my grandma died. All this stress happened in the
yeah.
family, and my dad started drinking a lot more, and started just being mean. And then I just like hated my last name because everybody
Mm,
knew we were the only Zants in town. There weren't any other
yeah.
ones. And so it was like this thing I was just like trying to get away from. I didn't want to claim my name. And it was just a few years ago when I was talking to someone and I said that they were fantastic and they called me Zantastic. And then
I
I was
love
just
that.
like, I'm Kathy's aunt and I am Zantastic.
Yes,
And
you
I'm just like,
are.
I feel like I reclaimed my name from like this
Yeah,
sort of weird experience growing up with this name being bigger than me. And now it's me, like Kathy's
yeah.
aunt. That's who I
I love
am. It's
it.
not like Catherine. It's not Kathy. I'm Kathy's aunt.
Yep.
And it
And
works.
there are
And I
some
have an
names.
aunt.
I love it. Kathy's aunt. I I my last name is not common. People haven't heard it much.
Yeah.
But if you're from Canada, you have, which is where my family hails from, that side of the family. So Frechette is more common in the Chicago area where my family had emigrated to or migrate, I don't know, whatever, had settled in
Yeah.
when my grandparents moved from Canada. And so my grandfather was a musician, a struggling poor musician with 11 children, but that's a story for another day. But he was a musician. So this is a funny story. Nothing to do with the name, but this is a funny story that you just made me think of. So I was at WordCamp Buffalo several years ago, way before the pandemic, maybe 2, 3 years before that. And I was on the organizing team and we had the speaker dinner. And then everybody left, and it was just me and two of the other organizers. And we're sitting at the bar. And one of them said, have you ever had a Moscow Mule? And I said, no. So now I'm sipping this Moscow Mule, talking to these two guys who I know, but didn't know like incredibly well. And they're talking about this player from the Buffalo Sabres who'd been traded. It was all over the Buffalo News. Everybody's up in arms that this guy was traded off the team. So they're talking about hockey, and I'm like, I mean, look at me. Am I a sports enthusiast? I think we all know I'm not a sports enthusiast. But here I am, a little, I mean, I was maybe a tiny bit tipsy. I wasn't drunk, but I go, oh, I'm like trying to fit in the conversation. My grandfather used to play for the Chicago Blackhawks. And they go, really? What position? I said, the organ.
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious.
We'll be like, do-do-do-do-do-do. And they're like, Michelle, when you say somebody played for the Chicago Blackhawks, they think you mean hockey. I'm like, oh,
Yes.
sorry. That's the
But he
closest I get
still
to
played
sports.
for the Blackhawks. That's
He
great.
did play for the Blackhawks. That's right. So,
That's
but yeah,
amazing.
I learned how to rephrase that in later times. He was a musician for the Chicago Blackhawks. He
That's
was
so
the
cool.
organist. It was cool. Yeah. And he used to play on the radio. And then sometimes his kids
Yeah.
would come and they'd sing along. But I have, I think I put it out on Twitter maybe last year or the year before. I have a recording of him playing Winter Wonderland on the organ from one of
Oh,
my aunts. Yeah. We had old glass records that some of them have digitized, which is pretty cool.
that's so neat. Oh, how
Yeah.
cool. I love
Yeah.
that. That is so amazing because it's like I love with all the way music and how we consume music changes, like a lot of that can get lost. So the fact that you
Yeah.
preserved it and allowed it to,
Yeah.
keeping a record of it as a legacy is so awesome.
Pretty cool stuff for sure. That's our claim to
Yeah.
fame. The family
Awesome.
claim to fame. So anyway, pretty cool stuff. And there are still people who are older people who will say that they remember hearing my grandfather on the radio.
Really?
Those people are dying off because it was a really long time ago. But it is still cool when somebody will say, "Oh, I remember Lou Frechette. He used to play the
Yeah.
organ."
Oh,
So,
that is so cool. That is so, so
and
cool.
I
I
have
mean,
his
I grew up
piano.
outside of Chicago, so I'm certain
Oh,
like
cool.
that I've got people probably like older relatives and stuff who probably might know, but
Yeah, it could be.
we were football people, I think. I don't know. There might be a hockey person around, but that is so
Yeah,
cool. Claim
they
to
may have
fame. I
listened to the
love it.
radio.
Yeah,
Anyway, so
definitely.
so capital P, lowercase p, WordPress, however you spell it. We love you anyway.
It matters what you do and who you are and how you are of service to the greater of
Mhm.
humanity rather than what's in a name.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So whatever's in any name, we'll see y'all next week. We appreciate you being here. And let us know. Is there any funny stories about your name? We'd love to hear them. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.
This has been WP Motivate with Kathy Zant and Michelle Frechette. To learn more or to sponsor us, go to WPMotivate.com.